The misunderstanding begins. The spaceship Horizon 1 glided smoothly through the darkness of space, its silver hull reflecting the distant stars. Inside, Captain James Carter adjusted his uniform and took a deep breath. Today was important. He was about to meet the rulers of sci-fi, an alien planet that Earth had been trying to befriend for years. The Typharians were an advanced species, known for their strict traditions and powerful technology. If Earth could secure a peace treaty, it would mean trade, knowledge, and a strong alliance. But if things went wrong, well, James didn't want to think about that. His crew, a mix of scientists and diplomats, stood behind him as they approached the Grand Hall of sci-fi. The hall was massive, with tall pillars made of a glowing blue crystal. Strange symbols decorated the walls, pulsing with light. Hundreds of Typharians stood silently, their tall, slender bodies covered in elegant robes. At the center of the hall sat High Chancellor Vroth, the supreme leader of sci-fi. His golden eyes studied James carefully, as if weighing his soul. Beside him stood Zeknar, his chief advisor, holding a long metallic staff. James stepped forward, bowing slightly. High Chancellor Vroth, it is an honor to stand before you. On behalf of Earth, I bring you greetings and a hope for friendship. Vroth gave a slow nod. Captain Carter, we welcome you to sci-fi. Your people have shown wisdom in seeking peace. Let us begin. James smiled. The meeting was going well. He gestured to one of his crew members, who carried a small box. Inside was something simple yet special. A meal from Earth. We bring you a gift, James said, opening the box. Inside was a perfectly cooked steak, golden brown with a side of soft bread. This is a traditional meal from our planet. Sharing food is a symbol of trust and friendship among humans. The moment the box opened, the entire hall fell silent. Vroth's golden eyes widened. Zeknar gripped his staff tightly. A hushed whisper spread through the crowd. Some Cypharians gasped, their eyes glowing brighter in shock. Others took a step back, as if James had pulled out a dangerous weapon. James blinked. What just happened? Zeknar finally spoke, his voice tense. Captain Carter, do you understand what you have done? James glanced at his crew, confused. I offered you a meal. Vroth stood up, his long robe flowing like liquid metal. His expression was unreadable, but his hands trembled slightly. Among our people, he said slowly, to offer food is not an act of mere friendship. James felt a chill down his spine. Then, what does it mean? Zeknar took a deep breath. On sci-fi, offering food is the highest form of devotion. It is a sacred marriage proposal. James's heart stopped. What? He shouted. No, no, no. This is a mistake. I just wanted to. Vroth raised a hand, silencing him. The Cypharians in the hall were now whispering in their strange, musical language. Some seemed excited, others shocked. Zeknar turned to Vroth and spoke in Typharian. James couldn't understand the words, but he didn't like the sound of it. After a long pause, Vroth looked directly at James. His golden eyes softened. Captain Carter, I accept. James felt his soul leave his body. Wait, 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 he said, raising his hands. This is all a big misunderstanding. I'm not proposing marriage. I was just. Vroth smiled gently. There is no need to be nervous, Captain Carter. You have proven yourself a being of honor. It is rare for an outsider to understand our customs so well. James turned to his crew, his voice a whisper. Someone fix this. His second in command, Dr. Emily Ross, swallowed hard. Sir, I don't think they're listening. James turned back to Vroth, who stepped forward. The guards now stood at attention, treating James with newfound respect. The human has chosen our leader. One of the Typharians announced. Let the preparations begin. The hall erupted in cheers. James watched in horror as Typharians rushed forward, placing a ceremonial robe over his shoulders. Someone handed him a glowing ring. Zeknar's staff flashed with energy, sealing the agreement in their tradition. And just like that, Captain James Carter, representative of Earth, had unknowingly become engaged to the most powerful alien ruler in the galaxy. His face paled. "Oh, I am so dead." A diplomatic crisis. Captain James Carter sat frozen, his mind struggling to process the disaster that had just unfolded. Around him, the grand hall of Cypher buzzed with excitement. Cypherians chanted in their strange musical language, their glowing eyes filled with admiration. He had accidentally proposed to an alien leader, and they had accepted. This couldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. James turned to his crew, his voice a desperate whisper. "Somebody, please tell me this is a bad dream." Dr. Emily Ross, his second in command, looked equally pale. "Sir, we need to fix this before things get worse." James let out a nervous laugh. How could it possibly get worse? As if answering his question, the tall, elegant form of High Chancellor Vroth approached him. His golden eyes shimmered with what James could only describe as affection. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no." Vroth extended a long, silver-fingered hand toward him. "Come, James Carter. There is much to prepare for our sacred union." James resisted the urge to scream. Instead, he forced a very polite, very panicked smile. "Chancellor, I appreciate the honor, but I think there's been a misunderstanding." Vroth tilted his head. "Misunderstanding?" James swallowed. "Yes. In human culture, sharing food is just a friendly gesture. It doesn't mean, marriage." The room fell silent. The excited whispers of the Typharians ceased. Zeknar, Vroth's chief advisor, stepped forward, gripping his staff tightly. His voice was low and serious. "Captain Carter, do you mean to say that your offering was made in ignorance?" James nodded rapidly. "Yes, exactly. Just a friendly meal, nothing else." A cold tension filled the air. Vroth's expression turned unreadable. His golden eyes flickered with something that James couldn't quite place. Zeknar spoke again, his tone now wary. "To offer food without understanding its meaning is a grave insult, Captain Carter." James's heart dropped. "Wait, what?" Vroth finally exhaled, his voice measured. "It is a deep sign of commitment among my people, a bond that cannot be undone without great shame. To take back such an offer is dishonorable." James's hands clenched into fists. He could feel sweat forming on the back of his neck. Of course, this had to happen. Dr. Ross stepped in. Surely there must be a way to correct this mistake. Earth came in peace. Captain Carter never meant disrespect. Vroth studied her for a moment before speaking. "There is a way." James perked up. "Really? That's great. What is it?" Vroth's lips curled into an amused smile. "You must complete the trial of honor." James blinked. "The what now?" Zeknar thumped his staff against the floor, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the room. It showed a massive arena, filled with thousands of roaring Cypherians. At the center of the arena stood a terrifying creature, a massive, six-legged beast with razor-sharp claws and eyes that burned like molten fire. James stared. "That thing looks like it eats metal for breakfast." Vroth nodded. "It does." James turned to Dr. Ross. "I hate it here." Vroth's voice was calm. "If you wish to withdraw your offer without dishonor, you must face the roll car in combat. Survive, and the engagement is nullified. Fail, and the bond remains." James exhaled sharply. "Okay, let me get this straight. Either I fight a monster that looks like it came from a horror movie, or I marry you." Vroth nodded. "That is correct." James pressed his fingers to his temple. "You know, on Earth, we usually just talk things out when there's a misunderstanding." Vroth raised an eyebrow. "That sounds inefficient." James groaned. This was so unfair. He was a diplomat, not a gladiator. He had come here to negotiate peace, not fight a death match against an alien monster. Dr. Ross leaned in. "Captain, We might not have a choice. We can't afford to insult them. If this trial is the only way to get out of this situation peacefully, you may have to do it." James let out a long, suffering sigh. "Fine, fine. I'll do it. But if I die, I swear I'm going to haunt the Cypherian embassy for eternity." Vroth gave an approving nod. "Very well. The trial begins at dawn." James's stomach dropped. "Wait, what? That soon?" Vroth smirked. "I admire your enthusiasm." James muttered under his breath, "This is the worst day of my life." The Cypherians cheered, the excitement in the room reaching new heights. As James was led away, he turned to Dr. Ross and whispered urgently, "Please tell me we have a plan." Dr. Ross looked worried. "We're working on it." James sighed. "Great, just great." Tomorrow, he would have to step into an alien battle arena, fight a six-legged death machine, and somehow not get eaten alive. He really should have just brought flowers instead of food. The terrifying wedding preparations. James Carter had always believed in diplomacy over violence. He had trained for years to be a negotiator, to settle conflicts with words instead of weapons. But right now, diplomacy had failed him. Instead of sealing a peace treaty, he was being prepared for a battle to the death. The Cypherian attendants led James down a long, glowing corridor, the energy walls humming softly as they passed. He tried to shake off his growing panic, but it was impossible. Every step he took brought him closer to the trial of honor. The only way to undo his accidental engagement to High Chancellor Vroth without insulting the entire Cypherian race. At his side, Dr. Emily Ross and his chief engineer, Lieutenant Mark Hayes, whispered urgently. "We need to find a way out of this," Ross said. "James, you are not a fighter. That thing in the arena, it's not a sparring match, it's an execution." James ran a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I'm painfully aware of that. Thanks." Hayes, always the realist, sighed. "Well, unless you want to go through with the wedding, you'd better start thinking of a plan." James groaned. "I was really hoping for a third option." They entered a vast preparation chamber, where a group of Cypherian priests waited. The room smelled faintly of burning metal, and in the center, on a raised stone table, lay a ceremonial battle suit. James eyed it warily. "Please tell me that thing has built-in lasers." One of the priests, a tall, blue-skinned alien with silver tattoos, shook his head solemnly. "No weapons. The trial of honor is fought with strength and skill alone." James turned to Ross and whispered, "Strength and skill. Great. Two things I don't have." The priest continued, "Your opponent, the roll car, is a sacred beast. It is relentless, without fear, and has never been defeated by an outsider. If you prove yourself worthy, you may leave with honor. If not—" He trailed off, and James sighed. Yeah. I become monster food. Got it." Ross grabbed his arm. "James, this is suicide. There has to be another way." James forced a grin. "Relax. Maybe the whole car is allergic to humans. One good sneeze, and I win by default." Nobody laughed. The Cypherians gestured for James to remove his jacket and put on the ceremonial battle suit. It was surprisingly light, made of a flexible metallic fiber, but it offered no real protection. James flexed his fingers. "Great. Now I look the part. Still can't fight, though." As he adjusted the suit, he noticed a large viewing screen flicker to life. A live feed from the arena appeared, and James's stomach sank. The roll car was already waiting inside the arena. It was worse than he had imagined. Standing at nearly 12 feet tall, the creature's muscular body was covered in spiked, black armor-like plating. 6 powerful legs dug into the ground, and its 2 front limbs, curved, scythe-like claws, looked sharp enough to cut through steel. But worst of all were its eyes, 4 burning red orbs, locked onto the gate where James would soon enter. The creature was already snarling, its elongated jaws dripping with acidic saliva that sizzled against the stone floor. James turned to Ross and Hayes. "Welp, I'm officially terrified." Ross looked just as shaken. "This thing could tear a tank in half, James." James exhaled slowly. Okay. Panicking won't help. Let's think. It's big, strong, and fast. But every creature has a weakness, right?" Hayes nodded. "Most likely, but we don't know what it is." Ross's eyes widened. "Wait, maybe I can analyze it. If we can find a biological weakness." A loud gong echoed through the chamber. A Cypherian guard stepped forward. "It is time." James felt his stomach twist. "Nope, not ready. Can I get 5 more minutes?" The guard didn't respond. Ross grabbed his hand. "James, listen to me. Whatever happens, survive. Stall if you have to. We'll keep searching for a way out." James nodded. "Got it. Try not to let me die." "Great plan." The chamber doors slid open, revealing the blinding lights of the arena. The crowd roared. Thousands of Cypherians gathered in the towering Colosseum. Floating drones hovered above, capturing every angle for the entire planet to witness. James stepped forward, shielding his eyes. The arena floor was solid stone, with jagged pillars rising at random intervals, probably the only cover he'd get. Across from him, at the far end, a massive iron gate began to rise. A deep, bone-rattling growl shook the ground. The roll car stepped into the light. The crowd fell silent, watching in anticipation. James exhaled sharply. He had to think. Fast. No weapons, no armor, just me and a nightmare with claws. The beast snarled and charged. James ran for his life. Assassins in the shadows. The ground shook as the roll car charged. James Carter had exactly 2 seconds to react before he became a smear on the arena floor. He threw himself sideways, rolling across the rough stone, just as the massive claws sliced through the air where he had been standing. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and laughter. James scrambled to his feet, heart pounding. Okay, running is good. Running is very good. The roll car snarled, its 4 glowing red eyes locking onto him again. Up close, James could see the tiny cracks in its dark armor plating. The creature had weak spots. That was good. But he had no weapons, no armor, and no plan. That was bad. Across the arena, High Chancellor Vroth sat on his throne-like seat, watching the trial with an amused expression. Beside him, Zechner stood stiffly, gripping his metallic staff. James took a deep breath. Think, Carter. You're not a soldier, but you're not stupid. Find a way. He scanned the arena. The stone pillars scattered around weren't just for decoration. They were strategic obstacles. The roll car lunged again. James dove behind a pillar, feeling the impact as the beast slammed into the rock, cracking its surface. All right, let's make this thing work for its meal. James darted between the pillars, using them to block the creature's line of sight. The roll car was fast, but it was also big, too big to move quickly between the narrow gaps. A roar of frustration echoed through the stadium. The crowd loved the show. James allowed himself a brief smile. Step 1. Survive. Step 2. Figure out how to win. That's when he heard it. A sharp whistling sound. He barely had time to duck before a black, needle-like dart whizzed past his ear and embedded itself in the stone beside him. James's blood ran cold. That didn't come from the roll car. He spun, scanning the stands. Hidden among the roaring crowd, he spotted them. Cloaked figures, moving too smoothly, their eyes locked on him. Assassins. James's pulse spiked. What the hell was happening? He wasn't just fighting the roll car. Someone wanted him dead. A bigger threat than the monster. James ducked behind another pillar, just as another dart zipped past him. Oh, come on. Fighting a death beast wasn't enough. From his high seat, Vroth noticed the disturbance. His golden eyes flickered toward the cloaked figures. He said nothing. James gritted his teeth. Was Vroth behind this? Did he set this up? No time to think. The roll car roared, its patience gone. It slammed its front limbs down, cracking the ground, sending shockwaves through the arena. James staggered, losing his footing. The creature lunged, and this time, James wasn't fast enough. A massive claw raked across his shoulder, tearing through the thin battle suit. Pain exploded through his arm as he hit the ground hard. The crowd gasped. Blood dripped from his wound. James clenched his teeth, rolling away before the roll car could finish the job. He pressed his hand against his shoulder. Not deep, but bad enough. And then something strange happened. The assassins stopped attacking. James, still crouched, looked toward them. The moment blood hit the arena floor, they froze. Like they were waiting. James's mind raced. Why? Why did they stop? He glanced at Vroth again. The High Chancellor's expression was calm. Too calm. He knows. He expected this. James realized it then. This wasn't just a trial. It was a test. A trap. Someone in sci-fi wanted him dead, but they couldn't just kill him outright, not with all of sci-fi watching. So they set him up. The moment he stepped into the arena, he was already marked for death. The roll car wasn't supposed to just test his strength. It was supposed to execute him. And if it didn't, the assassins would. James swallowed hard. Well, screw that. Fighting smarter, not harder. James wiped the blood from his forehead. His whole body ached, but his mind was sharper than ever. The assassins won't attack unless they're sure I'll die. That gave him an opening. The roll car growled, preparing to charge again. James grinned despite the pain. You're big, you're scary, but you're not smart, are you? The beast charged. James ran straight toward it. The crowd gasped. Was the human insane? At the last moment, James dropped low, sliding under the roll car's belly. His fingers skimmed across its exposed underbelly, soft, unarmored, weak. James scrambled to his feet. That's it. That's the weakness. The roll car spun, furious. James barely dodged a swipe from its claws. He couldn't overpower it, but he didn't need to. He needed to outthink it. James ran toward the largest stone pillar in the arena. The roll car, blinded by rage, chased him full speed. Just before impact, James dodged left. The roll car slammed headfirst into the stone pillar, hard. The impact shook the ground, sending cracks spiderwebbing up the rock. The crowd erupted in shock. James didn't stop. He sprinted toward the fallen beast. One shot. One chance. He leaped onto its back, using the broken pillar for momentum. With all his strength, James drove his fist, knuckles raw and bloody, straight into the roll car's exposed weak spot. The beast roared in agony. Its limbs shuddered. Its glowing red eyes dimmed. Then, silence. The roll car collapsed. Dead. The arena fell into absolute chaos. The aftermath. James stood, breathing heavily, his body trembling. His blood dripped onto the sand, mixing with the beast's dark fluids. The assassins were gone. He looked up. Vroth was smiling. James's stomach tightened. He knew I'd be attacked, and he let it happen. But he had survived. He had won. Zeknar stepped forward, raising his staff. The trial of honor is complete. The human has proven his strength and wisdom. The crowd erupted into cheers. James, still gasping for breath, muttered, "That's great. Now can someone please tell me who the hell just tried to kill me?" Desperate escape plan. James Carter stood in the middle of the Typharian arena, sweat dripping from his brow, blood staining his ceremonial battle suit. The lifeless body of the roll car lay beside him, its monstrous form sprawled out on the cracked stone floor. The crowd was still roaring, their excitement filling the stadium like a rising storm. They were cheering for him, chanting his name. Johns, Johns, But James wasn't celebrating. He wasn't thinking about victory. He was thinking about the assassins. They had vanished the moment the roll car fell. Whoever they were, they hadn't expected him to survive. And that terrified him. His eyes snapped upward to the grandstand where High Chancellor Vroth sat. The Cypherian leader was watching him closely. His golden eyes gleamed with something between amusement and admiration. Beside him, Zeknar, his chief advisor, stood with his metallic staff gripped tightly, his expression unreadable. James's mind raced. Vroth knew. He knew about the assassins, and he let it happen. Why? What game was he playing? James had no time to find out, because at that moment, Vroth stood and raised his hand. The crowd fell silent. Vroth's voice echoed through the arena. The trial of honor is complete. James Carter has proven his strength, his intelligence, and his worth. A low hum of approval rumbled through the Cypherian crowd. Then Vroth smiled. The wedding shall proceed at once. James's heart stopped. Wait. What? The trap tightens. James stumbled forward. No. Hold on. I won. That means I'm free, right? Zeknar stepped forward, his voice smooth as silk. The trial of honor ensured that you would not be dishonored, but it does not erase the bond you have already formed with our leader. You have only proven that you are a worthy partner for High Chancellor Vroth. James felt his soul leave his body. Are you kidding me? He spun toward his crew, who had been watching from the VIP section. Dr. Emily Ross had her hands over her mouth in horror. Lieutenant Mark Hayes looked like he wanted to punch something. James turned back to Vroth. Listen, buddy, I don't know what kind of twisted space romance rules you have here, but where I come from, I don't marry people I've fought to the death for. Vroth chuckled softly. And yet you have. Your actions speak louder than your words, James Carter. You could have fled, but you stood and fought. You have earned your place. James wanted to scream. Vroth turned to his advisors. Prepare the ceremony. Suddenly, James felt a hand grip his wrist. He looked down. It was Zeknar. But instead of his usual unreadable expression, there was something else in the Cypherian advisor's eyes. Urgency. And fear. Walk with me, Captain, Zeknar whispered. James frowned. Why should I? Because if you don't, you will not live long enough to see the end of this day. James swallowed hard. Yeah, that sounded bad. A hidden ally. Zeknar led James through a hidden corridor beneath the arena, his footsteps quick but precise. James followed, his mind racing. What the hell was going on? Finally, after passing through a series of security locked doors, Zeknar stopped in a dimly lit chamber. A holographic map of cipher flickered to life above a table. Zeknar turned to face James. You are in grave danger, human. James folded his arms. Yeah, I kinda figured that out when people started shooting at me during the fight. Zeknar's jaw tightened. It is worse than you know. There are factions within our leadership that do not want peace with Earth. They want war. James stiffened. And they see you as the perfect way to start it. James ran a hand down his face. Of course they do. Let me guess. The plan was to let me die in the trial, blame Earth, and then declare war. Zeknar nodded. Precisely. James let out a humorless laugh. Well, sorry to disappoint. Still breathing. Zeknar's eyes narrowed. Yes, and that is why they will try again. You must escape before the wedding ceremony takes place. If you do not, you will never leave this planet alive. James frowned. Wait, I thought marrying Vroth would stop the war. Zeknar sighed. That is what the High Chancellor believes. But his enemies, our enemies, will never allow that to happen. They will assassinate you and make it appear as though Earth betrayed us. James took a deep breath. Okay. So, escape plan. Do we have one? Zeknar hesitated for only a moment before pressing a button on his wristband. The holographic map zoomed in on the Cypherian palace. There is an old transport tunnel beneath the city. It leads to a launch bay with an emergency shuttle. If you can reach it, you can return to your ship and leave Cipher before they know you are gone. James narrowed his eyes. And why are you helping me? Zeknar's expression darkened. Because I serve Cipher, not the war-hungry fools who seek to destroy it. James nodded slowly. All right, I'm in. Zeknar's fingers danced across the control panel. Then move quickly. You have less than 2 hours before the ceremony begins. James sighed. 2 hours to escape an entire planet full of people who think I'm supposed to be their royal husband. No pressure. Battle for freedom. James Carter moved through the darkened corridors of the Cypherian palace, his heart pounding with every step. His pulse wasn't just from the urgency of his mission. It was from the unmistakable sense that he was being watched. Beside him, Zeknar moved with precision, his metallic staff glowing faintly as he unlocked the ancient transport tunnel doors. Once we enter this passage, Zeknar whispered, there is no turning back. The palace security will detect the breach within minutes. We must move fast. James exhaled sharply. Yeah, fast is good. I'd really like to avoid getting married or assassinated today. The door hissed open, revealing a long, winding tunnel stretching beneath the palace. The walls pulsed with faint blue energy, remnants of an ancient transportation system long abandoned. James took his first step inside, and the alarms started blaring. The betrayal. James spun toward Zeknar. You said we had time. Zeknar's face darkened. I deactivated the tracking systems, but someone has overridden them. Before James could react, the tunnel was flooded with red emergency lights. A voice echoed through the chamber. Cold. Commanding. Unmistakable. James Carter. I am disappointed. James's breath caught in his throat. He turned to face the large holographic projection now appearing at the entrance of the tunnel. It was High Chancellor Vroth. James had never seen him look like this. The calm amusement from earlier was gone. His golden eyes burned with something deeper, something darker. You would abandon your honor, your promise. After all we have shared, Vroth's voice was steady, but there was an undeniable edge to it. James clenched his fists. I never made a promise. I was just trying to be polite. Your people misunderstood. Vroth narrowed his eyes. And yet you fought. You endured the trial of honor. And now you run. James was about to respond, when suddenly the walls trembled. Heavy metal doors slammed shut at both ends of the tunnel. Zeknar's eyes widened. He's sealing us in. James spun toward Vroth's hologram. You can't force me to stay here. Vroth tilted his head. You misunderstand, James Carter. I do not need to force you. He raised his hand. The floor beneath James and Zeknar glowed with energy. Then the ceiling collapsed. The trap springs. James and Zeknar barely dodged the falling debris as heavily armed Cypherian guards dropped from the shadows above. James swore under his breath. You set me up. Vroth's hologram remained eerily calm. You set yourself up, James. You could have walked forward with dignity. Instead, you chose deception. Did you think I would not see? James gritted his teeth. I was trying to survive. Vroth's eyes darkened. Then survive. The guards attacked. James barely had time to react before a plasma spear slashed toward his chest. He rolled aside, grabbing a loose metal rod from the ground and using it to deflect the next strike. Zeknar, however, moved like a ghost in the dark. His metallic staff crackled with blue energy, cutting through two guards in one swift motion. James caught his breath. Remind me never to fight you. Zeknar didn't smile. Move. They dashed down the tunnel, dodging energy blasts as more Cypherian warriors poured in. James ducked behind a metal column. Okay, tell me you've got a backup plan. Zeknar nodded. The emergency launch bay. If we reach it, there is a single shuttle that can take us to your ship. James groaned. Please tell me it's not on the other side of the palace. Zechner didn't answer. James sighed. Of course it is. The final confrontation. James and Zechner burst through a side corridor, sprinting toward the launch bay. The room was massive, a towering hangar filled with alien vehicles, but only one small shuttle remained prepped for launch. James felt a wave of hope. We can make it. Then a massive force slammed into his chest. James hit the ground hard, his vision blurring as pain shot through his ribs. Standing above him, staff crackling with golden energy, was High Chancellor Vroth. Zechner moved to attack, but with a single wave of his hand, Vroth sent a shockwave of energy blasting through the room, throwing Zechner against the far wall. James groaned, rolling onto his back. He tried to push himself up, but Vroth placed his staff against James's throat. You could have stayed, Vroth said quietly. You could have been part of something greater. James coughed. Sorry, not my style. Vroth sighed. Then this is the end. His staff began to glow, charging up for a final lethal strike. And then the alarm blared again. Vroth's head snapped up. The entire palace was shaking. A voice crackled through the communication system. Warning. Unidentified Earth fleet detected in Cypherian orbit. James's eyes widened. Wait. What? The skies outside the hangar flashed red. Through the open blast doors, James saw it. A massive human battleship. Earth had come for him. A hilarious goodbye. The sky above HFY burned with light as Earth's fleet descended, their powerful engines roaring like a storm. The towering human battleship, the UES Titan, hovered over the palace, its massive cannons locked onto the Cypherian capital. Inside the launch bay, James Carter stared up in shock. He could hear the crackling transmission from his ship's comm system. This is Admiral Sarah Whitmore of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Release Captain Carter immediately, or we will take action. James let out a stunned laugh. They actually came for me. Across from him, High Chancellor Vroth stood, his golden eyes burning with conflict. His staff was still pressed against James's throat, but he did not strike. Behind them, the palace trembled as Cypherian battle sirens howled through the city. Vroth exhaled slowly. Your people would go to war for you. James grinned, still catching his breath. I guess they like me more than I thought. Vroth's expression darkened. He turned toward the viewing screen where the fleet's weapons were charging. His council members rushed into the room, demanding answers. What should we do, Chancellor? One of them asked. Vroth closed his eyes. For the first time since James had met him, the Cypherian leader looked uncertain. A choice between war and peace. The tension in the room was suffocating. James could feel it, the fragile moment where everything could collapse. He pushed himself up, rubbing his sore neck where Vroth's staff had struck him earlier. This is it, Carter. Talk your way out of this, or people die. James cleared his throat. All right, everybody, let's all take a deep breath. Nobody needs to vaporize anybody today. One of Vroth's council members snarled. This human has dishonored us. We must retaliate. Another hissed. He tried to flee. He broke the sacred bond. James sighed. Okay, first of all, I didn't break anything. There was never a bond to begin with. Second, what did you expect me to do? Stick around and plan a honeymoon. The Cypherians hissed in anger, but Vroth raised a hand, silencing them. He studied James closely. Then why did you fight in the arena? James hesitated. Because I didn't want to die. Vroth's golden eyes narrowed. No, you could have surrendered. You could have refused. Instead, you fought. You fought like an honorable warrior. You fought for Cyphar. James ran a hand down his face. Look, I respect you, really. But my people, humans, we don't do arranged marriages over dinner. We don't. Vroth's gaze didn't waver. You do not wish to be with me. James blinked. "Oh, well, look, you're great and all, but I don't think I'm really alien royalty material." Vroth tilted his head, then smirked. "Unfortunate. You would have made a fascinating partner." James choked on air. Wait. What? Did Vroth just flirt with him? Before James could even process that, the palace trembled again, this time from a warning shot fired by the UES Titan. "This is your final warning." Admiral Whitmore's voice rang through the chamber. "Release Captain Carter, or face the consequences." James turned back to Vroth. "Okay, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't let me leave, my people will start blowing things up. I'd rather not start an intergalactic war over a steak dinner, would you?" Vroth considered this. Then he chuckled. "Very well, James Carter. You are free to go." James let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The council erupted in protest, but Vroth silenced them with a sharp glare. "Enough," he said. "The human has proven his worth, but he does not wish to stay. We will not hold him against his will." James blinked. "Wow, that was surprisingly easy." Vroth smirked. "You are entertaining, James Carter. I will not force you into a life you do not desire." James sighed in relief. "Well, that's refreshing." Vroth stepped forward. "But I will leave you with a parting gift." James's entire body tensed. "Wait, what kind of gift?" Vroth reached into his robe and produced a small, glowing blue fruit. James stared at it. "This isn't another marriage proposal, right?" Vroth threw back his head and laughed. "No, human," he said, placing the fruit in James's hand. "It is simply a token of our time together." James inspected the fruit warily. "It's not poisoned, is it?" Vroth raised an eyebrow. "You insult me." James shrugged. "Hey, I've had a rough day." The escape. Minutes later, James boarded his shuttle. His crew was waiting for him inside, their faces a mix of relief and amusement. Dr. Emily Ross smirked. "So, did you enjoy your engagement?" James groaned, collapsing into his seat. "Never let me offer food to an alien ever again." Hayes chuckled. "Gotta admit, Carter, you do know how to make an impression." James rolled his eyes. Yeah. Let's just get out of here before they change their minds." As the shuttle lifted off, James took one last look at the palace below. Vroth stood on the balcony, watching him go. For just a moment, James thought he saw something in the Typharian leader's expression, something unreadable. Then the moment was gone. The shuttle soared into the sky, heading toward the waiting battleship. James slumped back into his seat. "I need a drink." Ross grinned. "Captain, you need a vacation." James exhaled. "Yeah, and preferably one that doesn't involve accidentally getting engaged to alien royalty." The crew laughed. As the shuttle entered warp space, James glanced down at the glowing blue fruit in his hand. He sighed. Well, at least it wasn't a ring. Epilogue. A message from sci-fi. Days later, James sat in his captain's quarters, finally relaxed. Then his comm unit beeped. He frowned, answering it. "Carter here." A familiar voice purred through the speaker. "James Carter. I trust you are well." James froze. No way. It was Vroth. James slowly placed his head on his desk. "What now?" Vroth's chuckle was unmistakable. "Do not worry, human. I am not calling to propose again. At least, not yet." James groaned. "I hate my life." Transmission ended.